Okay, this is work in progress. We are back again for another stimulating conversation with our friend here, Óskar Bragi. Did I say your name correct?
Já,
Okay.
mjög gott, mjög gott.
I have to say that it's really kind of cool talking with you. We talked a little bit before, and I had actually seen your YouTube channel a while ago on learning Icelandic, and I think I even bought one of your courses, I believe, and I just liked the way that you presented Icelandic. It was so, I had taken many courses before, and the way you presented it was just so relaxing. I wasn't as stressed learning what you were presenting, and I thought it was really kind of cool. And aside from being just a school book approach, so I'm really happy to talk with you now. And so I would like you to just introduce our viewers to who you are, your background, and tell us a little bit about what you do.
Well, thank you so much, Jeffrey. I appreciate that, and I'm really happy to hear that that's the impression and the feeling that you got, is this sort of relief. And you know, without tooting my own horn too much, I think that's maybe one of the stronger skills that I have, is to make people just kind of feel comfortable about the Icelandic learning process. And the whole reason why I like to take this sort of what I call the KISS approach, keep it simple, stupid, it's because I think that when things get too complicated, we're not really able to think as clearly about them. When there's too much stuff going on, we can't process it. And so it makes a big difference to keep things simple and to keep things entertaining. I think in education, a lot of times what's kind of missing, hugely missing, is the entertainment aspect of it. And I don't mean that in sort of like, you know, the way that you sit down to watch Netflix and you just kind of passively take in stuff, but I think you need to have, you know, stories, you know, things that rhyme, you know, little things to keep people entertained and to keep them, what's the word? Stimulated. That's right. Yeah, that's right. Engaged. And so what I have been doing with this big Viking project is, since 2014, I've been teaching people Icelandic online. And a couple of years ago, I started using this name that my wife actually came up with. She's the engineer and the author of the Speak Viking name. So I can't take the credit for that. Old credit goes to her for that. And yeah, I've been helping people learn Icelandic, and hopefully in a way that is relaxing, in that, you know, you're able to do it in these simple baby steps. And what immediately came to my mind when you said that, you know, you had this experience of feeling like, you know, a feeling of ease, I thought about this story that I heard from a friend of mine who was learning Icelandic, and the first class that she had learning Icelandic, she came into the room and the teacher was kind of all over the place. And then the teacher said, well, okay, so we have like 17 words for snow. And now we're going to go into that right now. We're going to learn these 17 name for snow. And what does hundslappadrifa mean? Do you know? And the people that are sitting are just kind of like, no. What's happening? And I think that's sort of maybe a lot of people's first impression of learning Icelandic is something akin to that. It's sort of like, a slap in the face. There's not a lot of context or information given, and you just have to jump into the deep end of the pool. And that's sort of everything that I try to stay away from.
That's excellent. I mean, I got to tell you, when my experience coming to Iceland was eye-opening, to say the least. And one of my I was married to an Icelandic woman, and she really wanted to come back to Iceland. And my whole thing was, from an American standpoint, I always felt going anywhere else in the world to live, you really should know the language of where you're going. And that was the biggest thing that I worried about moving to Iceland. My wife reassured me that it's not going to be as bad as you think. And I think she was wrong, but she comes from a little place called Ólafsfjörður, and she had spent 5 years or so in the States. She was going to get her master's degree. And she hadn't really lived in Reykjavik, the city. So she didn't really even know her way around Reykjavik when we moved back. It was pretty interesting. But to the point of Icelandic, I remember going to look for work, and we went to one of the job agencies, and the woman sat us down and she says, "Do you speak Icelandic?" And I said, "Well, pínulítið." And she said, "Do you write Icelandic?" And I said, "No." And she said, "You might want to just go back." I mean, like right off, she's like, "You might just want to turn around and go back." And I was like, damn, okay. Now, my wife was pregnant with our son. So we were a young family starting out. And that really scared the hell out of me. I was like, oh, damn, okay, maybe I made a mess. I messed up here. I ended up working at McDonald's when it was here. And I was really like, I knew the processes of McDonald's. I was actually training to be a regional manager in the States. So we had all this operational books. I mean, McDonald's is like a university. It's weird, but they, as a business, they really have their thing locked down. So we had all these books, and I was like, okay, these books are probably going to be in Icelandic. Let me see if I can see. And they gave me the books, and they were the same books. They were all in English. So I was able to just slip right in there. And then everybody working there was from another country. We had like one Icelandic manager, and everybody else was from another country. Everybody spoke English. So I said to myself, gee, this is going to be kind of tough because I'm talking English all the time, you know?
Right.
And when I did try to speak it, I instantly remember the foreigners in the United States who were learning English. And I instantly got into their shoes, and I understood how they felt, and how they felt was stupid, which is a weird thing to feel dumb about knowing something that you really shouldn't know about, because it's not what you were raised in. But when I would speak or try to speak Íslensku, it would be talking to a native person who never listened to someone butcher their language. So it was like, what are you saying? Just talk to me in English. I'll understand what you're saying. You know, the place could be burning. I can't figure this out right now. So we always reverted to English. And it always made me feel really bad, because I really wanted to embrace and get into this place that I was raising my son in and going to become a part of. And it was just so hard for me to get into it. I had studied Spanish and French in school, but those were really kind of leisure studies. They weren't serious. And in the United States, it's kind of an arrogance that we don't value other languages. I mean, most Americans travel to Mexico. That's the biggest place they go, and they're like, everybody should speak English here. It's like, you're in another country. It's not, English is not their native language. Well, they should speak it anyway. That's kind of the attitude most Americans have. Not all, but a lot. And I never had that attitude. I always said, it's kind of respectful to at least try to learn the language in the place that you're living. So that's why I was really drawn to how you presented it, because I had taken a few classes that were online. I don't want to mention anybody per se. I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings, but like you said, when I got into the classes, I felt really overwhelmed, just like grammar. And it's like, boom. It's like, forget about just asking, where's the bathroom? It was like, just here, this is the grammar. We'll get into that later. It was so intimidating. What I wanted to know, though, is, being an Icelander, what do you have a deeper meaning, and what do you see? Because every year it seems Iceland is becoming more multicultural. I see more different people living and interacting and engaging and trying to start businesses and things in Iceland. How do you see your role in that, in presenting Icelandic to someone who is new to it, and the importance of it? I mean, how do you see your role in the broader scheme of things, is what I want to say.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. And I just wanted to tack on, that comment you had about like the grammar. It's sort of like, we have, you have the playground, and then you have over here, you have these 6 layers of hell. And we're going to go with 6 layers of hell first. And then maybe if we're feeling up to it, we'll let you go to the playground for a little bit. But first of all, let's cover the 6 layers of hell over here, which is, I think, for most people, it would be to jump into the grammar right away. To your question about, my role and responsibility, I feel a tremendous amount of responsibility stepping into a situation of, somebody's first time, might be their first time learning a language, might be, a lot of times first time learning Icelandic, and sort of presenting the language in a way to them that is positive and a good experience and a fun experience. I feel that is a tremendous amount of it's a weighty, it's a heavy sort of burden, I think, to be stepping into that and wanting to give people a good experience, because it's not really something that I feel is mine, the language. It's this thing that I have, and it's something that's been sort of carried over for generations by a lot of people that, had to suffer, I think, a tremendous amount in their lives. And the sort of the produce, the inheritance that we as Icelanders have, at the end of all that, there's the fish and there's the language, basically, is what we have. And I mean, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think a lot of times maybe we're kind of doing a disservice to the language, to our inheritance, and to people that want to learn it, because we don't have a system in place that helps people to learn it in a good way. And so my role, what I see it as, is to do the best job I possibly can to give people to start off on the right foot learning a new language, and to do it in sort of like a safe environment where they can have a positive and fun experience, and not to beat them to death with the grammar.
Now that is very important. I mean, I'm relating on what you're saying from my own experience being in the States and dealing with I work in food service. And so a lot of people were from different parts of the world and learning English, a lot of them for the first time. And, I remember them saying, I feel really stupid speaking, trying to speak. And I'm like, why do you feel that's the first block, and you should get over that. And I've had experiences where I'd had Americans chastise, I was a manager, chastise workers under me for their bad English. And that kind of was heartbreaking, because most people who travel and want to live in another place many times aren't doing it for fun. It's opportunity or something for their kids, and understanding that a little bit of empathy gave me a lot of patience in dealing with people. And in Iceland, I've been received pretty well, but the one thing that really blew me away is so many Icelanders, young and old, have such a great command of English. And many of them say, I'm not good in English. And I always tell them, your English is much better than my Icelandic, like tons better, right? And that's always impressed me, because I only really grew up with one language. And I always kind of held people who knew how to speak another language in a kind of esteem, because it's another way of viewing the world in a way. But Icelanders with the command of many with a good command of English really blew me away, and kind of helped me be lazy in my learning, because it was so easy to just switch to speaking English. But I will say this, that having been on both sides of the coin, I really understand, which I think many Native people might take for granted, the desire to contribute and feel a part of. That is really significant, I think, to any population that's not Native, that is living and working and contributing monetarily or whatever to the society. That if you don't feel you are contributing, connecting, or valued, that can be a very distancing, negative thing. So the same things I've heard in Iceland, I've heard in the States, like, why do they always stick to themselves? We have Little Italy, Chinatown, Little Poland. We have all these spots that are native to people who come from different places in the States, but it's very much it's a very cool kind of thing, because you can go into Chinatown and be embraced. You're not like ostracized for being there, or go into Little Italy, and there's a certain pride. And that interaction for me, being an American, was always spice of life for me, knowing things from different places and interacting with people. But the need that I felt in Iceland was my need to be of value. Like, I didn't want to be a lump just sitting here taking up space. I wanted to contribute. So learning the language is a definite way of engaging in being that. And my experience has been that the language is really key. And when people give up on it, it takes them out of that. We're in this together. We should be working together. We are here together. So, we should understand the value we bring to the table. So I believe what you're doing is very important, is what I'm saying. Long way of saying it, I guess.
Well, that was a great way of saying it, Jeffrey. I appreciate you sharing, and thank you. Thank you for that. And I think it's a wonderful perspective to have, that, to have other cultures and other languages and other people's perspectives. It's enriching. And I was just listening to this audiobook by it was Matthew McConaughey's book Green Lights, actually. And he had this whole journey that he had. He went to Africa and he met these guys there and he was hanging out with them. And they were talking about like a cultural phenomenon where they were talking about this issue of like, you know, like a woman and she's not getting married and it's a Muslim country and, you know, she's kind of, you know, dating these guys and they're like, one guy had this opinion and the other guy had this opinion from the perspective of Matthew watching this. And he listened to them both. And then he chimed in and he basically said, well, I think, you know, you over here, you know, you made a good point here, but I think he's, you know, he's right over here. And the guys, like, they shut him down and they said, no, it's not about right or wrong. It's about understanding.
Wow,
like,
yeah.
like they were having a conversation about better understanding the woman's situation in this country of, you know, a Muslim country, whereas like, you know, maybe it's the American perspective, I don't know, but he came in from like what's right and what's wrong and how do we judge based on that instead of no, it's just we're trying to understand. Let's get the information and try to understand. And I forget why I went on that tangent, but I think this idea of like, yeah, trying to understand more about people. It's learning a language can be a huge part of that, and a way of, you know, thinking about things probably in a different way, because when you use the same language all the time to, you know, present your thoughts and ideas and emotions, you never really get that much of an experience of like doing it in a different way. And then, you know, sometimes people will be asking me, well, what about this word? What does this word mean? Why does this word mean this thing? And I'll be thinking about a word. I've used it a million times, but this is the first time I'm actually thinking about, well, wait a second, what is this word?
Yeah.
And so, you know, the process of, you know, teaching other people a language, I'm also learning so much about my own language that I just kind of took for granted. It's like that old, you know, you have an old pair of shoes. That's just like your pair of shoes that you put on and you don't really think about them, you know. But then when you meet somebody from Poland or from Costa Rica or Vietnam or the US, and they tell you, oh, you know, I think this about, you know, the 17 different words they have for snow. I think it's ridiculous, or I think it's fantastic, or, you know, whatever. And then you get to experience your own little world in a completely different and new way.
No, that's man, it's brilliant. What I was thinking also is, from your perspective, how do you see with I mean, when I first came to Iceland, I came in 2002. I didn't see many people of color myself. And it wasn't until I did we had the march. Well, it wasn't a march, but it was the gathering on the green for the George Floyd situation. That it was only then that I realized how diverse. There was a pretty good amount of diversity in Iceland. I didn't really know until that moment. How do you see? And Iceland, to me, I understand, is so young as a country. And my perspective coming from the States is the one thing I always felt proud about being an American was to be an American wasn't restricted. Anyone could be an American. And that was the beauty of it. My best friends growing up were from South Korea and the Philippines. And going to their house was an education on those cultures. And my own stepfather is Italian, and the way they celebrate Christmas was so over the top. And I learned so much, just how people view life. But the one thing I always saw was a similarity, just a different way of doing it. and I also, the thing I took pride in as being an American was, yes, so many people from all over the world have come and contributed. And if it wasn't for that, the United States would not be what it is. And seeing that Iceland is so young, I'm curious about your perspective on what is the future going forward. What do you think is Iceland's direction moving forward with, you know, it's such a ingrained culture that I find very few seem from the outside seem to be able to penetrate. And you do have a lot of diversity here. So what do you think moving forward should be an approach of either embracing that or somehow living parallel with these two, you know, having a multicultural and having such a distinct culture? It's fascinating to me because Iceland is so young that, you know, America has its ideal of being a melting pot. And I've asked some friends of mine who are Icelandic, like, well, what is it to you to be Icelandic? What does it mean to be Icelandic? If, like my kids are more Icelandic than they are American, because my daughter was born here. My son pretty much was raised here, was born in the States, but he came when he was young. And his whole way, and I see so clearly their way of thinking about things is so Icelandic, which I love. And it's so interesting seeing how they operate in America. And it's like, yeah, so I'm sorry, I'm going off. But yeah, so I wanted to your take on what it would mean for someone coming outside of Iceland who wanted to embrace and become Icelandic. What does that look like? What does that mean?
Yeah, I think, you know, it's a fantastic question and a big question to ponder. And I sort of feel like every time somebody asks me this, it's like I'm in this picture, I'm living inside the picture, and then you know, being from a different place, you see the picture from the outside. So you see all these little things, these nuances, and the Icelandic way, and I'm just over here in the picture living my life. Like, what are you talking about? Don't you do it the exact same way in the US?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's true. It's like, you know, foreigners who come in, like we have been in America, we're so ingrained into our our story, our indoctrination of being like the greatest, and we learn about just, you know, our you know, through the wars in the world and everything, the United States place. And so it's really easy to present these block ideas, freedom, which is really, yeah, there's a lot of countries that have freedom, but you know, freedom and opportunity, and you can be anything you want to be. And these are just the things we throw out that we kind of don't even think about, and a lot of times are not even completely true. It's just that's what they say it is, so that's what we're going with.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get it.
I think what you're talking about, we could frame it, or we could identify it as dogma. Now,
yes, good.
I mean, in religion, you will have something that is dogma, but what is dogma is not the religion. You know, the dogma is like the symbolism that has taken on a life of its own, that's been repeated again and again, and people have stopped deciphering it and pulling it apart and taking a good look at it. And I think for good reason, because it's hard to take a deeper look into things, to take a deeper look into yourself. And so this thing of like, yeah, Iceland, you know, we have the greatest, we have the best water in the world, and such, the air is so clean, and we're so strong, and we live for a long, long time. But that's sort of like the dogma. But what it actually is something a bit more complex. And the same with the US. But in the dogma, there is truth, but it's not the whole truth. So I think, and back to your point of like, how can we move forward in a society that's multicultural, but also very homogeneous? I think in some, whatever way it's kind of happening. It's evolving. We're all kind of evolving, and it's gonna keep evolving, and maybe it'll go down into like a negative portion, and then it'll come back up again, hopefully, and get positive, and then down and up. And we'll just kind of keep going and keep getting better, is my hope. But I would be more curious about hearing, because you said your kids have this Icelandic way of thinking. So I'm just kind of curious about what is that, and how does that look like from the American perspective?
You know, that is I haven't been asked that. That's a great question. It's been like, oh man, life is good. It's opened me up to, like, when you think you know something, you don't. And when I say that, I just see how my kids, when they approach subjects and topics, they're very open. The Icelandic education system, and I think generally European education system, there's something to be said for it, because just even their friends that I've talked to, their minds seem to be very much more open than I've experienced in the States. And I'm not sure exactly why that is. I think America is an empire that has sat on its behind for so long that, you know, we're thinking we're number one without exploring that. And so the way they look at things and approach things, I mean, little things with my kids, like when we went back, they weren't into big fast food. Like going to McDonald's for a kid in the States is like Disneyland. For my kids, no. they could go to like a restaurant or sushi or something. And my brother, who lives in the States, and his kids, like they go to the arcade on Saturday, and that's how they do. And my kids are into sports. So they're always out and hiking, and like, where can we go? Where can we go outside? So we go to these nature trails and whatnot. And it's so not generally the thing that kids in the States are accustomed to. It's always like, go to the mall. It's go to something man-made. That's really clear difference with my kids and their experiences in the States. They're more open to international issues. They're more aware of international issues. They really have their history nailed down, and it's secure under their feet. Whereas in the States, it's sort of like there's not that much appreciation for like learning history or knowing history. And so my experience talking with my kids, and they, you know, I learn a lot from my kids just by, and they learn from me, but because of the way in which they were raised and how I was raised. And you can see there's a difference. There's a change, of course. And, you know, it's refreshing to me. It's refreshing to me. They're very more practical. And that's a side of Iceland that really I loved, because it changed me in a lot of ways. Like, just, you know, kind of just like, get it done. Just whatever. You know, the snow here would close down my town in the States. It'd be just like, oh, there's wind, it's a little, okay, we're going to close all the schools. We're going to put on hold everything and it's like here, they're just, I see old people out there with the shovels, you know, 1 meter of snow. Like, okay, I got to get to the pharmacy. This is not, I'm driving, my car is front wheel drive. I don't care. We're getting it. And I'm like, damn, okay. Yeah. What, you know, that kind of just do it, you know?
Right.
I loved it, you know? I lived in Selfos for a long time around in a farming community. My wife, she was a skólastjóri in Flóarhepur, which was Vitlingaholt. And just the farmers and people I met out there, usually their kids went to school and came back and were on the farm. And the farmers there were just so relaxed. Most of the guys there were just so chill. And didn't have a command of the language, but I would sit with one of these old farmers. He would give me his homemade brew, and we would sit in Thorablut and just watch people. And he'd be like, "How come?" I was like, "What? How come?" I mean, yes, you know. And it was just so much fun because even though I didn't even speak the language, they were just so like, you know. It was refreshing. It was refreshing. In the States, we're always trying to be something, get somewhere, make a name for yourself. That's very much kind of an American thing. Having a title, oh, that blew me away here. You know, I was Mr. and Mrs. and you know, my doctor was always Dr. So-and-so. And, you know, the first doctor I met here, I'm like, yes, doctor. He's like, just call me Yon. And I'm like, okay.
Oh, what?
You know, wait a minute. Yeah, Yon, wait a minute, you know?
Yeah.
But that was refreshing to me. Yeah, definitely.
I think, yeah, like there's like a weight that comes off the interactions when it's not these highfalutin titles like Mr., Mrs., Doctor, the Honorable, whatever. Exactly. It's kind of just on because language is so much something that we think about it as the separate thing, but we live inside language. So when you use a title like Mr., it's loaded. When you use a 4-letter word that starts with F, then that has a certain charge to it. So yeah, when you sort of strip away all the titles and the guy is just Jon and you're Jeffrey and you're there to see Jon because Jon knows things that Jeffrey doesn't know, and that's fine, but you don't have to put him up on a pedestal with Doctor, and he doesn't have to put you on a pedestal called like executive manager or look down on you. It's just like, yeah, we're just, what's up? You got weird stuff going on with your feet or something? Okay, yeah. Well, it's probably this stuff. Take this lotion and it'll take care of it. And I mean, when you said that about America, and this sort of the drive, I hear that and I recognize that. And I mean, there are obviously like tremendously positive things that go along with that too, to strive. Like you don't get a Michael Jordan or a Steve Jobs or putting the American flag on the moon if you're not striving. But the striving can also get a little wonky and toxic, and you might lose sight of who you are somewhere along the way and striving for something. And yeah, and I think it's great that, like, the way that you phrase "þetta reddast," it's in a very positive way. But then sometimes, a lot of times, I hear from people, it's like the opposite. It's like a negative thing. It's like, you didn't think about a plan. Now everything has gone wrong. And now you're going to suddenly decide to fix everything. And you're going to slap this label on it. Like, yeah, it'll work out. Like, what a dipshit. What an idiot. And I mean, you know, it's like, you could look at it that way too, you know, and sometimes it is that. Sometimes it is like, why didn't we just come up with a plan and have it in place, you know? But the spirit of like, well, everything, the SHIT hit the FAN, and now we're going to figure it out. That's also, that can be beautiful too.
We had I'm going to wrap up. I think we're going long, but it's just so good. Excellent talking with you. We had a show, I think it was the last show we did, a friend of mine, Tater Singh, he works in a human resources capacity, and we had talked about the changing population in Iceland and the positives and negatives of having that diversity coming in, and how the native population either embraces or is cautious of that interaction and that exchange of ideas. And like I said, I think what's most important is the understanding of people, and knowing that really to be happy is to know that you are valued and that you contribute something, you're worth something, and that your voice matters. And it's hard to find that, especially if you're not native to wherever you are. It could be going into the States. My wife telling me, but you know, there's a difference too. I'm sorry, I'm going off on a tangent, but my wife, when she moved to the States, clicked in instantly, because the embrace of foreigners at the time was like, you're going to bring something to me. You're bringing something to my life. And it's not spoken of mostly, but in general, the circles you run into in the States, they're happy to meet somebody from somewhere else. It's like, if I can't go to Europe, the next best thing is to talk to somebody who is from there. And you're bringing something to me. I don't know what it is. It's kind of like a weird thing, because we put people who speak multiple languages on like a pedestal, you know, really. Like, you're automatically given genius status to the general population if you speak more than one language, you know. And her interaction in the States was a little more quicker, I think. People embraced her right away. And she said the same things that I felt coming in and learning the language, or feeling insecure and all these things. But knowing people, and knowing the basic need for a human being is those things, I think helps both sides to embrace what's there, you know, and be able to utilize it to the best. Yeah, where was I going with that? But yeah, we're coming to the end, and just want to be about an hour. I want to talk to you some more. So I would love for you to come back on and talk with us some more. Just
absolutely. Yeah, be my pleasure and an honor. Yeah.
Yeah, we are in the middle of a crazy time in the world, and I think discussions like these help people to see people as people. And I think the more we can talk with each other, you know, as best we can, the better this world will be. You know, I want to say a prayer for the people in Ukraine. I have friends that I know who have roots there, and you know, having spoken to people who've been in war, it's just such, I just don't understand it. I had joined the military when I was younger, and one of the main reasons I'd gotten out, I was talking with one of our producers before, was because I just really didn't want to have anything to do with the taking of someone else's livelihood or life because they didn't agree with something. I made that decision when I was 19. But on a lighter note, I really want to thank you for coming and talking with us. I really enjoyed this so much. I thank you so much. It's rare that I get to talk to an Icelander and just get their perspective and like try to see things in a different way, which helps me in my daily life. And actually my desire to even læra íslensku meira, fleira, betri?
Meira, betur. Yeah.
So right for that, we're gonna close out, and I want to thank anybody who has any questions. We have a YouTube presence. And I would advise you, please go check out Oscar's YouTube presence. You want to give that for anyone who's listening and watching?
Yeah, thank you, Jeffrey. So you can go to it's Speak Viking, basically youtube.com/Speak Viking, and then if you go to www.speakviking.com, you can check out everything about the Speak Viking Icelandic teaching, and you can even, if you keep scrolling down, you'll be able to send me a message on Facebook. Please feel free to do that. Thank you so much, Jeffrey. It was a real pleasure talking with you today and hearing your perspective and your thoughts, and yeah, hearing about your background and what you think about Iceland. It's always wonderful to me to hear, good things that people have to say about Iceland.
Yeah.
So thank you.
All right, and with that, work in progress, we're gonna wrap up, and hopefully next time we'll see you with some more interesting people.